Well, first of all, let me thank everyone for joining us today. We are here on a very important mission. You can call it a rescue mission of young men and boys of color in the state of California. We know the statistics. We know that they disproportionately represent our dropout rates in our schools. We know that they disproportionately represent our prison system and many, many other adverse impacts. Speaker of the Assembly, Speaker Perez, authorized a select committee on the men and boys of color. I have been honored to chair that select committee. We are gathered here today to share with you some of our legislative package information as a result of several hearings that we've had up and down the state. Each hearing standing room only, each hearing involving a lot of young people. First of all, I want to thank the California Endowment for their leadership in helping us facilitate great community involvement in the organizations that at each stop that have helped us. Policy Link, the Warren Institute out of Berkeley, IDA California, Public Counsel, the ACLU, Youth Justice Coalition, Youth Law Center, Youth Policy Institute, supporters from Fresno to Los Angeles to Oakland. Our next hearings are in Fresno on April 13th, and we have a hearing in Sacramento on August 8th and Chilla on June 29th. And we're very proud of the fact that this has not just been a mission that's involved legislators, but it's been led by the youth themselves. And many of the youth have joined us today. They're here lobbying on different bills. I have a bill, AB 2300, which tries to make sure that when we have discipline in schools, it's not punitive. There's a way for young people, instead of contributing to the truancy rate by being very punitive with young people, give them a chance for community service in some productive way for them to contribute. This has not just been measured by the Assembly. As you see, in many of my colleagues that are here from the Assembly, you'll hear from some of them today. But we also have the Senate President Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg, who has been a champion of issues of education and a number of bills that attempt to deal with these questions of severe discipline and punitive discipline. And so we're going to hear from Senator Steinberg, and then we will hear from a couple of my colleagues who have joined this effort to make sure that we pay attention to this issue. Remember, this state spends billions of dollars addressing the adverse impact of men and boys of color, and this is a way for us not only to help develop productive lives, but also help shape California's economy. So please welcome Senate President Darrell Steinberg.
Thank you very much, Andre. Thank you very much, Assemblymember Swanson, for your kind words. More important, for your leadership in taking on this crucial issue that, doesn't rise to the top of the political pop charts here. You don't see people, campaigning about it. You don't see it discussed in our national dialogue, but it should be. It should be, because it's about our kids. And I thank you for what you're doing. I thank your colleagues as well. And thank my colleague, Senator Curren Price, the chair of the Black Caucus, for being here as well. I know that you can be overly nostalgic about the good old days, and not, the good old days weren't always the good old days. But it does seem like in past generations that if a child was suspended from school, it was like a big deal. It was like a big deal. You took notice. And now it is like the default for too many schools to suspend a kid just because it's the easier thing to do than to work with them. It's one thing if somebody, is a grave danger, or, commits a violent act, but that's not what we're talking about here. In California, we're suspending kids at alarming rates. In 2009-10 alone, 757,000 suspensions, a number equivalent to the size of the city and county of San Francisco. In 2010, another 700 suspensions, some for up to 5 days at a time. Sadly, just like with so many other issues in our society, a disproportionate number of these suspensions are given out to students of color and students with disabilities, just increasing the already troubling achievement gap in the state. Not acceptable. Not acceptable. We know what happens. A kid who doesn't have to be suspended, who is suspended, stays home, falls further behind in school, is unsupervised, has a much greater chance of dropping out, and becomes a statistic as opposed to a child who maybe needs a little bit more guidance, a little bit more discipline, a little bit more help, and a little bit more of a positive direction. And so there are a whole series of bills here that are important. I have one measure, which says that for schools with a high suspension rate, 25% or more of kids suspended, that they must develop alternatives to suspension that are positive, that are remedial, and that hold a child accountable for whatever misbehavior they might have engaged in, but keeps them in school. There are examples of this all over the place, whether you call it restorative justice. How about making amends to the person you got into a fight with, or the person you talked badly to, or the teacher you may have you were out of line with? How about community service, as Assemblymember Swanson's bill suggests? Keep kids in school. Keep kids in school. And financially, by the way, not that that's the most important thing, but the loss to the schools from the lost so-called ADA, schools need money too. Keep kids in school. Reduce the dropout rate. Help kids who are having any kind of challenge or trouble, as long as they're safe and other kids are safe, keep them on a path towards graduation and success. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to just thank the chair of our select committee for his extraordinary commitment to this issue. He has been singularly focused on it, and so it's a pleasure to join with him, Pro Tem Steinberg, and my other colleagues who have stepped to the plate to address this issue in a number of ways we think is in a very collaborative, very positive, productive way. Across California, youth who have been involved in the criminal justice system are pushed out of school through restrictive enrollment barriers, and obviously these impact our students of color most dramatically. Once denied enrollment at traditional schools, most youth are forced to attend alternative schools. For these students, alternative schools represent an exit system, the last step before dropping out of school. 63% of students attending continuation high schools drop out altogether, 81% at community day schools, and an astonishing 98% at juvenile court schools. Educational rights for adjudicated youth are often stripped away once they enter the juvenile justice system. Frustrated, alienated, and uneducated, these youth often return to the streets only to continue the same destructive patterns that took them there in the first place. In an effort to address this problem and to protect the rights of adjudicated youth, I'm authoring Senate Bill 1088. This legislation, which is sponsored by the Public Council and the Youth Law Center, would prohibit the practice of a public school denying enrollment or readmission to a pupil solely on the basis that he or she has had contact with the juvenile justice system. The bill would further ensure that expelled students are given the opportunity to demonstrate that they have completed their rehabilitation plan in order to allow them to be readmitted to a regular school. SB 1088 clarifies existing law and seeks to give probation officers, parents, and advocates a specific tool to use when enrolling these youth back into regular comprehensive school programs. This measure will also help reduce both the high school dropout and recidivism rates for one of California's most at-risk student groups. Every child deserves a second chance, and SB 1088 would provide that opportunity to succeed. It was approved unanimously in the Senate Education Committee on an 8-0 vote. It's currently in the Senate Appropriations Committee awaiting a hearing, and we appreciate your continued interest and support as it moves through the legislative process, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to secure this and other measures that are going to make a difference in the lives of our youth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.